progress being made.
It's the mAng and Neads show.
Welcome to Sonic Gardens Radio.
Last night, the FDA announced groundbreaking new policies to further
mAng and
increase
Neads.
testing. We're very substantially.
It's the mAng and Neads show
Giving you guys your latest coronavirus updates.
on a Tuesday afternoon.
Sonic Gardens Radio.
Trying to
All
make the
states
best
can
of the
now
situation.
authorize tests developed and used within their borders. In addition,
Sonic Garden Radio. It's the mAng and Neads show right here. We got a special edition.
to the FDA. So the states are very much involved. They have been involved from the beginning, but we're stepping it up as much as we can, and the testing procedures are going well. And within a
So,
short
Josh, I
period
got a
of
map
time,
up in your corner there.
Right here.
Yeah,
huh?
that one, yeah.
Fucking A. I've got a map right here.
Yeah.
Now this map shows all the infected
All the,
areas.
Yeah, all the cases, and looks like you want to know. I mean, New York is the highest number with 1,700
Cases. A lot of them are down in the city, right? But it's making its way up our way as
Well,
we
that's
speak,
what happened.
right?
So there's definitely cases here
Is
in
it
Norwich.
Shenango, Norwich.
They
Norwich.
they sent somebody to Wilson, or they went to Wilson, one way or the other, but they were identified as from Norwich.
Unbelievable.
labs will kick in.
So,
It's never been done before.
I guess the biggest thing is that I kind of I realize that sometimes people aren't really. It's like you got to find that middle ground between overly cautious, but the way I see it is we went from gatherings of 500 people down to literally in less than a week that the number was now half capacity of whatever the establishment was. And then it dropped to 25 people, or 50 people, 25, and then 10. And this is all in like less than a week, or less than 2 weeks.
So basically, on that, the breakdown is basically the more people, the more chance you have to get it and spread it if one of you does have it. So say there's 25 of us and one of us brings it in and he's in too close a contact with all 25, then 25 had it. But if it was the same deal with 50, then 50 would have got it, right? That's the thinking on this? You would think, right? The less amount of people you're around, if you're infected, you've given it to that they could go give it to. Really, you know what I mean? Like, so if I went to a concert with
right. Well,
say-
I mean, yeah, definitely.
right, that's the thinking in this, right?
I mean, I imagine, yeah.
That's the
They're trying to reduce it by
Right.
keeping people away from each other so it can run its cycle and end. That's kind of how I was thinking about it. It wasn't as much about, it was about everybody walking around doesn't really know if they have it. They
right,
might
that's,
be the
that's
one.
what I'm saying.
So
You
obviously-
might have it, but if you're around 25 instead of 100, that's 75 less people that can get it from you, right? Or whoever has it in this group you're in.
Right.
So it's going to run its course, but is it going to stick around? You know what I mean? There's all that too. So the people
Well, that's why I really don't think we've seen an end. If you look at the other countries that have already been that this has happened and how quickly it spreads, with some situations being worse than others.
I just read I just read a report a couple minutes ago about China having like American journalists and stuff sending them out of there or quarantining them. Yes.
Yeah.
I just read that a few minutes ago.
So this was
very.
Yeah. What do we
I
got?
think
The
it's gonna be
president.
Incredible if it's done properly, and these are great companies. These are among the greatest companies in the world, actually. So the state's going to be dealing through themselves and with local government, local physicians, local everybody. They're also dealing with us. But we have a tremendous testing capacity.
Everything is tremendous.
Today, we're also announcing a dramatic expansion of our Medicare telehealth services. Medicare patients can now visit any doctor by phone or video conference.
So basically, they're opening the bank on this. They're like,
Who's hoping to bank?
no, they're opening the bank. Sorry.
Oh. Yeah, they're opening the bank called money that doesn't exist.
Right. So the dollar's not going to be worth $1, really.
It's so crazy because you talk about Yeah, something from nothing. You know, this is serious. This is disaster recovery. I'm not saying that this isn't real, but it's like, whose decision was it that the people that need the most help or the best way to distribute that money is to bail out Wall Street investors, which is basically, like I was saying earlier, gambling. But
Right.
they don't suffer the consequences of gamblers. Like, they
Right.
don't get their fucking hands broken when they lose money. They don't, you know.
Yeah. So basically, leading up to what he's going to be saying here shortly is about while we're listening to this, he's going to break down about giving the average citizen like you and I money. Is the whole reason I really pulled this up. You're listening to the Mang and Neads show, Sonic Garden Radio, right now.
Yeah, we got some live music from Mr. Christopher. This is our spot, man. This is where we're doing it. This is where we're riding out the end of the world. We're going to call this our afternoon daily end of the world podcast.
So this is
Countdown.
Chris's new song called Anything But Trump. So hope you enjoy it.
So out of nowhere, we basically got hammered with oh wait, are we moving on to
No,
a
go
song?
ahead.
We got hammered with and then you guys cut right down. But we got hammered with all, you know, we just found out one day that everybody was out of a job and small businesses had to shut their doors.
Yeah.
Like, how many people between bars and restaurants and the casinos, just those things alone just put so many people out of work. And what are those businesses saying? They're saying, okay, you got your choice. You can stick around and help out with this stuff.
Right,
But,
they're cut like restaurants and stuff like that. Obviously, you don't need a bunch of people to work there if you're only they're doing
The delivery
and
the pickup.
takeout.
But to me,
still, you got to cut it down with employees.
it sounds to me like in that situation, if you're the 30th customer of the day and just so happens you're one of those people that got it, then now the rest of the customers after number 30 are susceptible to be carrying, from what I would understand. I
Well,
mean, somebody
it all
tell me
depends on
different.
how your delivery guy, if he does what he's supposed to, no.
Well, that's why I was
If
saying,
he's
like,
careless, yes.
Okay, well, in some cases, they're being told, yeah, we'll do this, but it's a cash only. When I think should be reverse.
Right.
They should be credit card purchase only, and we will drop your meal.
Right.
And then they are taking the risk. But no, it's not even about risk. It's about minimizing the and the best way to minimize is
No
complete
contact.
social distancing.
It's basically like if you want to do it right, you got to do every man for himself or every couple for themselves. Seriously, like if you want to do it right with no risk, so us coming down here is, you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, obviously.
But
Us three, and
yes.
we're also choosing that we're not going to go to the store. So I mean,
that's
like,
what I'm saying. That's my every man for himself shit. Like, so if we don't go to the store or whatever, we're gonna sooner or later we're gonna have to start like, we're gonna have to eat. So we're gonna have to do something where we have enough food for three of us to eat.
Right.
That kind of shit without interacting with another human. So say we're a package of three here. We're gonna have to go.
Yeah,
down
no,
to that,
I thought about that because
we're
I
gonna have to
didn't.
go down to the river and fish, right?
Yeah, I didn't stock up on anything. So I'm basically looking at it like, oh wow, everybody else somehow did, and everybody's saying they're crazy, and they are for like overly taking more than they need. If
Right,
somebody
but-
grabbed, but they're also thinking a month's worth of supplies.
But what
right
if
now,
they can't? Like, what if these people that went out there and bought all the shit? What if they can't get back to the store again? Or what if you
That's
don't
my
have?
point.
Yes,
and
and what if,
then who's the idiot?
and then they're all complaining about this. But what if you like you just said,
And then they're
everybody's out of
gonna
a
say-
job? What if that was your last paycheck and you're like, well, if I go buy everything now, then I'm not.
At least I won't die in the next couple weeks.
Right, if I don't have money, I can't get food anyways, so I'm going to make it count right now. If I spend all my money on food now, I won't buy something stupid while I can still go out before they shut everything down. That might have been some thinking, right? You never know if you're going to make it back to the grocery stores, that old thing.
Well,
Like,
that's what I'm kind of saying, and I guess because we're in town, I think it's not as bad, but any interaction. And that's what I was saying, is that everybody's like, oh, we're still doing this and we're still doing that. And I just think that that's not that's not doing what it takes. Any company that is open right now is really just risking everybody. Everything.
If someone has
and
it
to the point where, like I said, I can't stress enough that when I say that 10% of the people tested have died in Italy. Tested. Now, I understand that's not everybody, and maybe there were twice as many that didn't get tested that had it, that it passed through. But the facts are that 10% of the people tested have died. And I don't care what their conditions were. They were sick, this or that. It's still insane because writing off the sick or the susceptible is not where I see my scruples on humanity. Save the people. Sonic Gardens Radio, Mang and Neads Show, End of the World podcast. Tune in. Word.
coming in hot.
At no additional cost, including with commonly used services like FaceTime and Skype. A historic breakthrough. This has not been done before either.
Trump's still bragging. That fucker.
In addition, states have the authority to cover telehealth services for their medical patients.
He's reading
And
this
by
all
doing
off
this,
a
the
piece of paper.
patient
That's
is
why
not
some of
seeing
it
the
sounds
doctor per se,
intelligent.
but they're seeing the doctor, so there's no getting close. During this time, we will not
When he
enforce
said this has
applicable
never been
HI
done before.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He definitely he was looking up when he said that, and excellent, and everything's under control. He was not reading off anything when he said that.
PAA penalties so that doctors can greatly expand care for their patients using telehealth. The penalties won't be enforced. We encourage everyone to maximize use of telehealth to limit exposure to the virus. It's been a very successful method of communication, but never used on a scale like we're going to use at telehealth. And you'll be able to also better maintain hospital capacity by doing this. Earlier this morning, I spoke with executives from America's fast food industry, Wendy's, McDonald's, all of the big ones, Burger King. Just on a scale like we're going to use at telehealth. And you'll be able to also better maintain hospital capacity by doing this.
So honestly, though, when I really started thinking about this on another level, and I was kind of straightened out because I noticed, I was informed that the hospital was digging and had machinery up there to dig a flat level for to bring in tin sheds for the overflow of patients.
All right, so
and I'm like, whoa. So you're saying that somebody contacted that place, said we need to invest this money into making this happen because we know that there's going to be an overflow. It is a definite thing, and we need to get machinery up there and build this stuff and lay all this flat work and to get a level area to literally within a week making all that happen.
Cuomo's been on it from day one. He's been saying it the whole time. We need to he needs more money. He doesn't have enough money. He needs national and federal money. Cuomo's been saying it from day one. Let's build, but I don't have the money. He was asking for it. Yes, he's been asking for it. He needs the money. He can't pull enough funds from the state. He's not like the president. He can't just make money appear. So
yeah, it's pretty wild because he.
Why my point being right here, what you're trying to say about the hospital things, what the great Donald Trump was just saying is they're trying to use the Skype doctor and that stuff to be able to find out if you're what symptoms you have and if you need a test. And they're talking about getting tests to you or doing the drive-up thing, but they want you to do the virtual doctor thing. So
Okay.
you're not clogging up the hospital. But they're just I saw this morning like there's 58,000 hospital beds maybe in New York. Maybe 3,000 ICU beds, and they think that there's way more than is going to come in at one time.
Sorry. I caught myself saying it, and then I fucking had to. Wow.
Wow. So,
I wonder if that's patented, Fucking Jim Baker and his wife might come after us for fucking using that
Wow.
term. Sorry for the language.
Also better maintain hospital capacity by doing this. Earlier this morning, I spoke with executives from America's fast food industry, Wendy's, McDonald's, all of the big ones.
He had breakfast.
Burger King, and they were great.
They were great.
About the pickups in light of yesterday's guidance you heard.
Trump's all set.
Eating or drinking at bars, restaurants, or public food courts.
He kind of said Burger King with disdain,
and delivery service can play
McDonald's.
in the weeks ahead. So that's happening, and they have been fantastic. They have been absolutely fantastic.
So now when they do these conferences,
they're keeping it open.
They got him out in front. They got 4 or 5 people right behind him, and they're all shoulder to shoulder, basically touching.
And they're doing it, pickups. Our guidance yesterday urges
so
Americans to
they do
take
not
action
heed
for
the
15
call
days
to
help stem the
social
outbreak. So it's a
separate.
15-day period. I guess now would say it's a 14-day period. It's 15 days from yesterday, and we're asking everyone to work at home.
Now this
if
is like your
possible,
cult
postpone
leader
unnecessary
Asking
travel,
everyone to work at
and limit
home if
social
possible.
gatherings to no more than 10 people. By making shared sacrifices and temporary changes, we can protect the health of our people, and we can protect our economy, because I think our economy
gotta
will come
protect
back
that
very
fucker.
rapidly. So it's 15 days from
So I was
yesterday.
always
We'll see
told,
what
like, you
happens
should
after
lead
that.
by
He was
example,
right.
especially if you're the fucking president of the United
Country and
States,
the world,
right?
frankly, but our country can
Yeah, you would
be
think so.
rolling
Especially at a
again
time like this when
pretty
more
quickly,
people are going to pay
pretty
attention
quickly.
to him to see what the fuck he's going
We
to
have
say.
to fight
then,
that invisible
because there's
enemy
nothing else going on.
I guess unknown, but we're getting to know it a lot better.
Hell, they canceled
Today, the
Saturday
Senate has
Night
taken
Live, for fuck's sake.
Coronavirus legislation that includes free testing for those who need it, as well as paid sick leave and family medical
They've
leave
done away with all
for
the late
workers
night
affected
shows for
by
now.
the virus. We're also committed to getting small
I just
business
read a few minutes
support that
ago,
they need. In fact, one of
in
the things
Kentucky,
we talked about with the fast food
someone that
operations,
had
we
the
spoke to chairman
coronavirus
and
checked
CEOs of all
themselves
the
out of
companies, but one of the
the
things we
hospital
discussed is
and
exactly that,
refused
getting
to
small
self-quarantine.
businesses support and
So
flexibility
the
that they
police,
need for themselves and for their workers.
they have
and
his
that's being
house
worked on
surrounded
right
now.
At my direction, Secretary
that's where that
Mnuchin
left.
is meeting today with senators on additional stimulus packages. I can tell you he was meeting with them late until the night last night, and for a big part of the day yesterday, and tremendous things are happening.
Tremendous
Great
shit.
spirit,
man.
tremendous spirit. And I can say that for Republicans and Democrats. I can say that with respect to Governor Cuomo. We had a great talk this morning. We're both doing a really good job, and we're coordinating it. And say that with respect to Governor Cuomo, we had a great talk this morning. We're both doing a really good job.
They're both doing a really
I can say
good
that for
job.
Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, they
I
are.
can say that with respect to Governor Cuomo, we had a great talk this morning. We're both doing a really good job, and we're coordinating it.
You
And
listen
we
to
agree,
Sonic
different states,
Garden Radio.
Need different things, and we
Mega
we
Needs
agree
show.
on that 100%.
Yeah.
But with
Sonic
Tuesday.
Gardens Radio.
I think we're right down the
March
same track,
17th.
and it's going to be very successful. New York has a
What is this? Day
pretty big, need different things, and we
day number
we
2.
agree on
What do
that
we call this?
100%.
Day number 2 of the
Been a very good talk,
lockdown?
and I think we're right down the same track.
Technically, yesterday
It's gonna be
became
very
10
successful.
people,
New York
which
has a-
means
need
any
different
given
things,
store,
and we,
any given
we
gas
agree
station,
on that 100%,
any
but
given,
we had a very good talk, and I think we're right
any
down the same
given
track.
interaction.
And it's
Families
gonna
are
be very
bigger than
successful.
10.
New York has a,
Right.
pretty big problem. I guess would be the number one hot spot. That's no fault of anybody's. It's just
Right
the
now,
way it is,
Josh,
and
we
we're
got Jim
working very
Baker in
closely
a
together.
photograph up there of his buckets. Is there any way you want to maybe give a little talk about Jim and what he has to offer
Well, Jim.
for the future? you get on waiting list.
All right, so Jim Baker's got the. If you would have bought one of these buckets a year ago, or even two of these buckets, this guy
You'd think you were pretty smart right now.
Yes, because this guy will sell you a 5-gallon bucket of rice and a 5-gallon bucket of cheddar and broccoli. Now that's 10 gallons together, you would think, but no, not with Jim Baker. Now. You boil this rice and stuff, and next thing you know, you got 20 gallons of rice. And then you hook up the cheddar and broccoli. Next thing you know, you got 20 gallons of cheddar and broccoli. And you pour that together, you got 40 gallons. Now, he doesn't sell this stuff, but he will take a donation, and the only way to get the stuff is if you donate more than $650. Now, $650, it doesn't seem like too much, not for a year's supply of meals, and the shelf life on this stuff is unfucking believable. 30 years is the shelf life on this stuff. 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's unprecedented stuff if you think about it.
You think those buckets have like? I mean, what's up? I guess who cares, right? 30 years from now, if you're
Well, it's
surviving,
just got a good seal on it, I guess, right?
it's like a paint bucket.
Yeah, it's a 5-gallon plastic bucket, which is probably terrible for you, but
Oh man.
yeah, emergency. It's like for emergencies. It's just for this shit, man. He's been. I've seen some of his shows there, and he just thinks that sooner or later, like Armageddon's coming, like shit's coming. And then if you
And he finds he lines it up with the prophecies of the Bible.
he had on one of them he'd call it survival food,
But I guess
or
in a sense,
apocalypse chow. You know, this guy, he's got it all. Like apocalypse chow, man. All right, go ahead.
Go ahead with what?
You were saying something before I cut you off.
Oh, I can't remember what I was saying.
I always
But,
I'm rude like that.
No, I mean, yeah, Jim Baker, man, he's crazy.
Oh, he's wild.
But he might be the guy. Now he's like saying, should
imagine
like
it.
his stock is up.
Yeah, his buckets must
We're
be
talking
selling
about
like
him.
crazy. They must be crazy selling.
The dude just walked through.
Yeah, I kind of saw that.
That was crazy.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to pull up a Jim Baker clip here.
I think we got a visit from the dude. Oh my God, is the dude really who we think it is
Our
now?
enemies have seen our weakness, and it's our grid. Our grid is vulnerable. There's something wrong in America. If that grid comes down, 95% of the population of the country will be dead within 1 year.
See?
Because they're not prepared. Okay, I said, listen.
Wow.
It's no bonus food. You're never getting another bonus food because we won't live unless I stop the madness.
So he's got to stop the madness. Megan Neads show right here.
That's right.
There
Jim
he
Baker.
is.
We just wanted to give another little plug on him.
Yeah, Chris. Let's have a little background, little elevator music for Jim.
He definitely sounds better with some music behind him.
Yeah.
I just love their products. This is a popcorn popper. But, who says you can't put your food in there, build a campfire, and you shake it like that, and you put it
Dude,
in,
we got-
and you put it
We gotta pull up these videos of this guy. This guy is, I'm telling you, man, I don't know if they're on mushies or DMT or fucking anything, acid, but whoever makes these videos for him, like, they're his videos, but they're like, he does some wild shit in them that, like, it seems like you would only be tripping your balls off to.
and you put it in, and you put, and you,
To,
it's
like,
better
fall
than
for it.
dying. I don't know what our kids are going to do. Because some of them are as dumb as rocks, and I know they're going to come after me for that. I don't know what our kids are going to do. Because some of them are as dumb as rocks, and I know they're going to come after me for that. But they don't know how to do anything.
Yeah, this is a must. We must do that.
Whoever edits these videos, they do some of the wildest close-ups, like on him and his wife, and you think I say fucking stupid shit? Whew. This lady holds the cake.
You know how big the gangs are? Of young people and older people belong to the gang. They will take everything you have. 200 million people. They will take everything you have.
Our hearty home-cooked food.
Of young people and older people belong to the gang. They will take everything you have. 200 million. You know how big the gangs are? Of young people and older people belong to the gang. They will take everything you have. 200 million people. They will take everything you have.
Our hearty home-cooked food time of trouble offer is for a donut noodle soup, tortilla soup, potato slices, jelly, pancakes. Your choice of 4 buckets or 2 totes, 8 buckets or 4 totes, and your choice of 28 buckets or 14 totes.
It's better than dying.
So for $1,000 donation, you can get yourself 14 totes, and you'll be eating and eating and eating.
It's better than dying. It's better than dying.
And it's better than dying.
Mang and Neads show live. This is Sonic Garden Radio. Back to our commander-in-chief.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to pull this Jim Baker down.
Very much involved. They've been involved, but now we're getting them to a different level. And we'll have everything ready. We're dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, should that be necessary. We have that.
They're bringing in the Army Corps of Engineers.
Standby in other cases, but my conversation with Andrew Cuomo was very productive and good. I appreciate that. We're giving relief to affected industries and stuff.
So I'll do a little recap. The NFL is free agency hit. They're making moves. It's the end of an era in New England. Tom Brady has announced that he's not going to re-sign with the New England Patriots and is seeking employment elsewhere. So there's that. No sports, but sports news. The Colts are in talks with the great Phillip Rivers. Maybe to sign him to be their quarterback for a couple years. He's currently at 37 years of age. The Dallas Cowboys put the franchise tag on Dak Prescott, so he'll be there for another year. He absolutely blows, but that's besides the point. What else we got? We got all kinds of fucking sports news. Cam Newton's going to be traded. They don't know who, because they just signed, or they're going to sign Teddy Bridgewater to a 3-year deal worth $60 million. That's the Carolina Panthers. What else we got, Chris? We got anything cool going on today?
Businesses, and we're ensuring that we emerge from this challenge with the prosperous and growing economy, because that's what's going to happen. It's going to pop. One day we'll be standing possibly up here. We'll say, well, we won. And we're going to say that. Sure as you're sitting there, we're going to say that. One day we'll be standing possibly up here. We'll say, well, we won. And we're going to say that. Sure as you're sitting there, we're going to say that. And we're going to win. And I think we're going to win faster than people think, I hope. Challenge with the prosperous, and we're going to say that. Sure as you're sitting there, we're going to say that. And one day we'll be standing possibly up here. We'll say, well,
Listening to Sonic Gardens Radio.
we're going to say that. Sure as you're sitting there, we're going to say that. And we're going to win. And I think we're going to win faster than people think, I hope. Later today, I'll meet with the leaders from the tourism industry as well as industrial supply retailers and wholesalers to discuss their critical roles. As you know, I met with the department store people, all of the retailers, the big ones, including Walmart, take everything, just buy what you need and go out. They're going to stay open all hours of the day. And,
All
frankly,
hours.
stronger than ever before. And we recognize that while many American workers can work from
You're listening to Sonic Guardian Radio.
first responders and men and women in the food service and manufacturing, our food service and manufacturing certain items. Take Vice President, Mike Pence, say a few words, and then I'll make some other introductions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Should be.
Thank you, Mr. President. So a few minutes ago, you heard our daily dose of Jim Baker.
I leave it all alone.
That's our
I go back to the basics.
track called Got Buckets.
I'll set out on my
Jim Baker Squared.
own. Face it. I leave it all alone. 'Cause I go back to the basics. I'll set out on my own.
Swift action
Save on.
existing testing capabilities, but also in connection with the efforts around the country.
The Dow Jones jumps 1,000 points
Yeah, come up, huh? People are
as Wall
selling.
Street cheers the coronavirus stimulus plan. Oh, wow.
Sending money to the Americans. Can't spend it, but you got it.
See, even news people. Al Roker does the weather from his kitchen during coronavirus. Is this really, like, is news done? Like, who's reporting? Who's working?
Oh, they don't worry. They got him out in the fields. He's just, you know what I mean? It's a good excuse to say, we don't need to pay him. Who gives a shit what the weather's like? We're staying in. Right?
Yeah.
Basically. He's probably got it, though. They're not telling you that shit. Like, these people that they're keeping at home, somebody might have it.
Well, I think they...
You know what I mean? You can do the news from home if you're sick. You're just practicing social distancing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Security, the job they did at the airports was really incredible. They screened thousands and thousands of people. O'Hare got backed up a little bit, but
I like how he throws a subtle punch in there once in a while. The airports did great. O'Hare got backed up a little bit, but they're fucked anyways, he says.
incredible thing. Then they had a big surge also from the UK and Ireland, and that went very smoothly. But they did. He's going to the Hill. He's been working very hard with the Senate and with. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. So, Steve Mnuchin, please be bold, and the level again of enthusiasm to get something done. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. So, Steve Mnuchin, please.
That guy's... This guy's a dork.
Who, Steve?
Yeah.
And what that will do is the Fed will be setting up a special purpose vehicle, which the Treasury will invest
We're
$10 billion in.
End of the world. No, man, that's what I was saying.
They're
It's like
setting
restaurants
up-
are trying to stay open by offering, this curbside
Well,
thing.
you know what a
and
lo-
they're all infecting each other. It's just, it's
yeah,
not.
but you know what a lot of it probably is, Angelo? It's like you got to get rid of that food you got in your...
But that's my point, is that everybody is thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? Meanwhile, everybody just, like, so many people just got laid off. The choice now is either be laid off or take that risk. But you're not just risking yourself; you're risking everybody, is what it seems like.
Right, but the owners, like, they got all that. That's why a lot of them I saw that they're giving it away and stuff like that. They're doing, like, free food things because they got all that food and they don't have anybody to sell it to.
Well, that's legit because you can just make that food and you can send it off and have the one interaction delivery to, like, a school or to whoever's delivered.
Right.
Like, I don't know, man.
If you wear the proper stuff, it's just like you going down and getting a sandwich made.
And then who's providing it is what I'm saying. So does that mean a mask for everyone? Does that mean a radiation suit? I mean, how far do you go?
Right. I don't know. We'd have to get Fauci on the line and see how, because I heard him saying the more stuff, like, it's not, like, if you touch something I touched, it's not an apt to spread as if I give you a handshake. It's going to spread, yes, it can, but it's not like you shaking my hand, so the chances are down. I don't know. They did a bunch of... We need to get Fauci on the phone. You think you could get him on the phone?
Who?
Dr. Fauci, the guy the 79-year-old doctor.
Yeah, I got him on speed dial.
All right.
Sonic Gardens Radio. All right, symptoms. Just, I guess, really we should break down the basics. I don't know who's been through it, but the people with symptoms of the coronavirus may experience a runny nose, a sore throat, a cough, a fever, pneumonia, and difficulty breathing in severe cases.
Jesus. Those sound like symptoms of everything.
I got a zero checks out of any of those. But I just don't think anybody, it's like you got a lot of hysteria, but people are worried. So it looks like they're trying to get an 800. Okay, so Wall Street got $2.5 trillion or $1.5 trillion. Yeah, $1.5 trillion, and he wants to get $850 million to the American people.
Yeah, he's gonna talk about it right here. They're gonna start talking about the money.
So that comes that means over $2 trillion with nobody saying, hey, how are we gonna pay? Well, everybody's saying how are we gonna pay for it, but it's just one of those things that just seems like they're just trying to you got to keep the system going. That's why they got to stimulate the Wall Street. But yeah, $850 million.
This week, the airline CEOs have had conversations with the Senate and the House. As the president said, I was up with a subset of the Republican senators last night. I've discussed that with them. I think, as you know, this is worse than 9/11. For the airline industry, this is, they are almost ground to a halt. The president wants to make sure that although we don't want people to travel unless it's critical, we want to maintain for critical travel the right to have domestic travel.
$50 billion, is that
I'm not going to comment on the specifics. I will tell you we're very focused. There's a lot of workers. This is strategically important to us, and we'll be working with Congress.
$850 million is really only $3,
Yeah, go ahead, sis.
like a person. $250.
$1,000 checks to every American.
Here it is, right here.
Increasing support of Republicans and some Democrats for that.
If you
Would
vote
you
Republican, you get
support
$1,000.
Or would you support some sort of income restriction on who gets a check?
Well, I think it's clear we don't need to send people maybe $1 million a year checks. Okay.
So they're not gonna send millionaires money.
The ideas we like. We're going to preview that today, and then we'll be talking about details afterwards.
Well, I think we're going to do something that
Because
gets
you already
money
sent
to
the
them as quickly
millionaires'
as possible.
checks.
That may not be an
With the
accurate
Wall
way
Street.
of doing it, because obviously some people shouldn't be getting checks for $1,000, and we'll have a pretty good idea by the end of the day what we're going to be doing.
I need that 1,000.
Can you tell how would the mechanics of this work? I mean, we've been talking about
Send it over.
Send it over.
Donations from the United States government to help us support Sonic Gardens Radio. I am all for the bailout. of humans.
Again, we want to make sure Americans get money in their pockets quickly.
Fucking
We want
A.
to make sure small business owners have access to funds. We want to make sure that hotels,
Low interest.
airlines, we have an entire package. We'll be laying out those details later today.
Chris, would you like to see his
There are
package?
4 different ways you can do it. That's 4. You can hear me well enough, I imagine. Okay. People at home, you're right. Those are very important people. Come to think.
People at home are very
Especially-
important people.
Look, we hear me well enough, I imagine. Okay. People at home, you're right. Those are very important people. Come to think. Especially. Look, we have 4 or 5 ways we can do it. 4 ways in particular. I think there's a 5th possibility, but there are some very good ways of getting the money out and getting it out quickly. Payroll tax is one way, but it does come over a period of months, many months, and we want to do something.
comes over a period of
So
months.
I think we have ways of getting money out pretty quickly and very accurately. Okay?
Can you talk about the timeline, please? How quickly do you think you can get this done?
We want to do something much faster than that, so I think we have ways of getting money out pretty quickly and very accurately. Okay?
Okay?
Can you talk about the timeline?
Okay.
How quickly do you think you can get this done?
The president has instructed me we have to do this now.
Fucking
So this is
now.
We are gonna
You're
work
listening
with
to
the Senate
Sonic
session
Garden
now.
Radio.
We will continue to have conversations with the House.
Mang and Neads show, Tuesday afternoon.
All right, I pulled up CDC website information here. Tells you the basics, what you need to know. Find local information, know where to find your local information, and trends of the cases. Know the signs and the symptoms. What to do, symptomatic, stay home when you're sick. Call your healthcare provider's office in advance of a visit. Limit movement in the community and limit visitors. Take steps for those at higher risk. Know what additional measures those at higher risk and who are vulnerable should take. Protect yourself and your family. Implement steps to prevent illness. Again, stay home when sick, hand washing, respiratory etiquette. Clean, frequently touch surfaces daily. So it's like what? This shit's just floating around in the earth?
Yeah, just, in other words, stay the fuck home.
And then you got to create a household plan.
Yes.
Create a plan of action. And I figure, we really got to get Curtis in on this.
Right.
If we're gonna survive, we need Curtis. So we're hoping we're gonna be able to recruit him.
We'll get him down.
So we're definitely planning some household steps down here at Sonic Gardens Radio. We got a pretty good fortress here. Can lock down, run out for supplies.
What we do have is a water tower. So that could come in handy. Especially if there's water in it.
Here we got how it spreads. Let's see about that. Person-to-person spread. The virus is thought to spread mainly person-to-person between people who are close contact with one another within about 6 feet. 6 feet person-to-person.
Yeah.
Through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. Someone can spread the virus without being sick. People are thought to be most contagious when they are most symptomatic. Spread from contact with contaminated surfaces or objects. May be possible that a person can get by touching a surface or object that has the virus on it, and that does not sound like person to person, if you ask me.
That's person to thing.
How
to
easily
person.
the virus spreads can vary. Some viruses are highly contagious, like measles, while other viruses do not spread easily. Another factor is whether the spread is sustained, spreading continually without stopping. The virus that caused COVID-19 seems to be spreading easily and sustainably in the community in some affected.
Bradley Newman, covert operations.
Travelers
Vietnam.
Travelers from China, Iran, Yeah, I saw a disturbing photograph of an aerial picture of Iran, literally like days after they had their first case, and they were digging some mass graves.
Just gonna empty the. Even if you got it, they're putting you in there. You test positive for it, poof. Shit's getting real in Iran.
For medical reasons, we are shutting down parts of this economy, and we're going to use all the tools we have, as I've said, and what we don't have, we're going back to Congress.
They're going back, man. They're shutting shit down and going back to Congress.
We don't want to talk about it, but it's a substantial number.
We're going big. The expression, we could do it two ways. We could keep going back every day or every week. We're going big, and that's where Mitch McConnell, that's the way he wants to go.
Oh, they got Mitch on the case.
Mitch is on it.
And,
He's finally going to pass a bill, huh?
Yeah, he could fuck up a free lunch.
Meetings every couple of days. We don't want to do it that way. We want to go big, go solid. The country is very strong. We've never been so strong.
We've never been so strong.
Mitch is one of those that, everybody bitches about all these people that get rich on politics, but the same people aren't saying that about a guy like him that is like, muh. So we'll see what these guys can do.
When they were doing very well just 4 weeks ago. So we're going big.
So yeah, we don't have any new information here that I can come across.
Did you find another map? I guess we could listen to Don Lemon tearing the fucking John for defending Trump.
John who?
I can't say his last name there. I can't even fucking say it. He ran for president last. Let's hear Don rip into this guy.
Be able to come in from Europe? Are they not? Every producer was running around here scrambling and saying, did the president say we need to know? We can't report it. We don't know what to report. The president said this. We don't know.
That's Don Lemon, who was clearly confused about what was going on following Donald Trump's Oval Office address on coronavirus. But Don Lemon wasn't the only one, because there was a great deal of and so he had
Yeah, you got a world map up there right now, Josh, right to your underneath. If you just
right here,
right there, sir.
Actually, right?
Yep, perfect.
Right here, what do we have?
And you're pointing
Right
at
there.
the United States.
Fucking America.
Right, and we're gonna get. We're gonna.
Tiptoeing around it. He came out, gave an address that usually that happens very rarely, and I don't understand why you are tiptoeing around. He's straight, accurate about to calm people's fears. He didn't do a good job of it because they've had to come back and clarify it several times. And this has been going on long enough for them to get it straight. We need straight, accurate information from this president and this administration, and we're not getting it. And I don't understand why you are tiptoeing around it. He came out, gave an address that usually that happens very rarely, and he doesn't get it right.
I'm going to tell you, first of all, he read it. And somebody that wrote this, look, I don't want to get into that. It was on today.
Why not? That's why you're here, to talk about the president's address.
Can I finish now?
No, you can't, John, because we're here to talk about the president's. Wait, we're here. I don't want you to go on and deflect and talk about something else, because we're here to talk about the president's address. And you said that someone else wrote it. He's the president. Even if someone else wrote it, it should be right.
So I don't blame Don Lemon for being as upset as he is.
It was not right. You gotta at least get it right, she says.
Is because, again, there were, what does this travel ban mean? Will it make news? And also there was a real quick thing I wanted to read you.
Sonic Garden Radio.
COVID updates.
COVID operation out in
Yeah.
Vietnam.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open up the lines here for another last 10 minutes. We're going to play some music, but if we get any calls, we will answer. The number here is 607-373-HEAT. That's HEAT. 607-373-HEAT.
I fall in love too easily.
4328. Wait, is that what it is?
Hey. What?
4238? Shit.
Give him Neads number.
I might have done that whole thing wrong.
I think you did.
We might get a different word out of it after all. Lines are open. 607-373-4328.
You gotta drop that effect out.
Sonic Gardens Radio. Mang and Neads Show.
Thank you.
Come on, kick the fuck.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
Tough like tough gun. Enter the lion straight out of Babylon.
Sonic Gardens Radio. Mang and Neads Show. End of the world. End of the world.
End of the world.
End of the world as we know it.
G.
of the vibration neatly captured in a sound. Reminiscing back from it was just a little boy. Me there every second and every minute of every hour.
Yo, we got a breaking news. 13 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Entire Trump stock gains gone. Everything.
Wait, what?
It's all gone. All that money he threw at it.
They spent it already? Please explain.
I don't know. I got to look more information on this now. See if we can pull something up. Something more than what I had. Oh, it says 1 day ago, stock market news live, stocks boosted as Trump talks Corona. Okay, so that's like coordinates with what was just happening, probably.